Hello friends, old and new. Welcome to my first Ulysses video. The Ulysses read along that Mr. Marc Nash of London, England has talked me into doing. It didn't take too much persuading. It is my favorite novel, and I don't know how many times I've read it or talked about it or had groups about it or taught it, but it's been many times. Briefly, I got my grandmother, of all people, got me my first edition of Ulysses in 1984. It was the Viking Edition, which is almost the same as a Random House edition, but this is the edition you want to get. The Gabler edition. It's, I don't know any Joyceans who don't use this book. Now, it's fine if you want to use a Random House edition, but the pagination is off, and you can come back in 2030 and go read it again. But this is the one you want. Again, if you have the Random House, it's fine. I'll be able to keep up with you and answer you. Right off the bat, we're going to have a Voxer group, so hit me up. My Voxer name is Allen770, lowercase Allen 770. It's going to be in the description box below, or you can hit up Marc Nash. We're both on Voxer. There's going to be, I'll leave a link below to the Ulysses Wikipedia, which is going to be helpful to everyone, as well as I was checking it out a couple days ago. I followed Frank Delaney, Joycean, who unfortunately died a few years ago, but he was doing a line-by-line analysis of Ulysses. Now, he passed away before, I think we were into episode 10, Wandering Rocks, but we didn't get through the whole book. And unfortunately, it doesn't start at the beginning, the podcast. It starts at chapter 4 with Bloom, but it's very detailed. I'll leave a link below to that. And I also discovered an article with John Kidd, who this edition came out in 1986, and there's controversy surrounding it, and it's not. He didn't correct all the errata in it. He corrected most of it. And like I said, I don't know any Joyceans who don't use this copy. But John Kidd, I remember, I was involved in it a wee bit online and that. But there's an article from 2018 from the New York Times of the strange case of the missing Joyce scholar. I'll leave a link below to that. I haven't read the whole article yet, but I will. Yeah, so this is going to be hashtag Ulysses 2020. We're going to be doing it from February to March. Bloom's Day is June 16th. This came out in June. Let's see, I don't want to make this real long, but yeah, I guess I can start out by saying I can't stand it when people say immediately, this book takes place in a 1 day and 24-hour period. It's like, I know that they haven't read it when they say that, because it doesn't. It takes place in about 18 hours. It starts at 8 a.m. and Bloom and Stephen are under the shelter, the cab shelter, by 3:33 a.m. How do I know that? Because the sun was about to rise then in Dublin on June 17th. And also throughout the novel, we hear characters. Bloom checks the time, like what time is it, noon. Molly hears the chime of a church at 2 o'clock, and that's at 18:1231 through 32, page 1231 through 32 in episode 18, Penelope, at the end of the book. See, pagination. So, I can prove things that I say. So time, it's Aristotle. The novel does comply to his unity of time and place. That a novel should take place within a 24-hour period. Well, it's close enough, but I like to poke the bear a little bit. Someone just recently did a video, I think last month, about Ulysses, and I couldn't get through like 2 minutes of it before it seemed like a Cliff Notes version of the review. Yeah, and it takes place in Dublin, so unity of place. It's in medias res because it begins in the middle. It begins actually 3 months directly after Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. And also I'm going to leave a link below. We did Dubliners 2019, and a lot of characters in Dubliners reappear in Ulysses. Especially, you might want to read the story Grace from Dubliners. So link below on that. It's a synchronized narration where kind of like in the meantime, ... this happens. Things are happening at the same time. And it's fun. I'll take you through a lot of this is a fun book. Very fun, very funny. Difficult, a little bit, but you get out of it what you put into it, of course. There's things like a floating cloud. Yeah, you can track the cloud. Bloom actually walks in a question mark. You can track all that. There's the man in the Mac. Keeps making these appearances. A man in the Macintosh. He's even in the record for appearing at Dignam's funeral in episode 5, Hades. There's a blind beggar that goes through the novel. Molly actually gives him some money through the window of 17 Echo Street, where they live. And how do I know all these things? Like, I know Rudy, Bloom's son, died at age 11. Now, that's not until like way at the end of the novel, episode 17, Ithaca. But what am I trying to say? I just know from studying and reading this book, things that aren't mentioned. Joyce actually tells us nothing that the character isn't thinking in the time present, in the moment. I have another joke here. Like, for example, you might want to just page through the book, and notice, like, for example, episode 7, Areolas, takes place at a newspaper, at the Freeman's Journal. And so it has these headlines. Why? Because it's in Freeman's Journal. And Ithaca, episode 17, has all these questions. Now, my one criticism of this book is at the end of Ithaca, there isn't a dot. There should be a black dot, a plunket, that's German for full stop. And even the Penguin edition, I think, has a square, but Random House has a plunket in it. And I was going to do my dissertation at Arizona State University on proving that Bloom actually goes through this plunket. Now, it could be anything from a period to a black hole, to Bloom's anus, but goes through this plunket to appear on page 314, which is the number of pi, which is exactly half of Finnegan's Wake. He goes through the plunket to write Finnegan's Wake. Now, this is how crazy you can get to it. When I studied Ulysses in 1996-97 at University College Dublin on scholarship from Arizona State, I wrote a paper, an essay, proving that Buck Mulligan, who appears in chapter 1, Telemachus, is actually gay, a homosexual after Stephen. and he's very jealous of Bloom. You'll see in the National Library episode in here. He's Mulligan is quite the character. What else? Episode 18, Penelope. It's all Molly's soliloquy, they call it. It takes an hour to read aloud. That adds on an hour of the time period. But it's 3 periods. There's a period at the end, a period in the middle, and her menstrual period that she talks about. So, jokes in Ulysses, right? The novel begins and ends with yes. At the end, yes, I said yes, I will, yes. In the beginning, it starts with stately, Buck Mulligan. Stately has yes backwards in it. So that's about it. It will behoove you. None of these episodes, chapters, have titles, but they are given titles, and you might as well go through the novel in preparation for next month. It's in 3 parts, 18 episodes. It follows Homer's Odyssey, believe it or not. That's right, the character like Bloom, a Jewish man by birth, not by faith. He's an Irishman through and through, but he is Jewish, and you might call him an anti-hero. And the question is, how can you compare him to Odysseus? But how can you compare Molly to Penelope, or Stephen to Telemachus? Well, we'll get into that. We'll get into that for sure. But in the meantime, take your Ulysses, go through each of the episodes, and part 1 is called the Telemachid. Part 2 is Wanderings of Ulysses. Part 3 is The Homecoming. So part 1 would be the first 3 episodes, and they are Telemachus, Nestor, and Proteus. Chapter 3, Proteus, might be the most difficult chapter in the novel. So once you get through that, it's smooth sailing. Now, in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, part 2, the next 12 episodes, The Wanderings of Ulysses, go ahead and put for chapter 4, Calypso, chapter 5, Lotus Eaters, chapter 6, Hades, chapter 7, Aeolus, chapter 8, Laestrygonians, chapter 9, Scylla and Charybdis, episode 10, Wandering Rocks, 11, Sirens, 12, Cyclops, 13, Nausicaa, 14, Oxen of the Sun, 15, Circe. Circe is the longest episode in the book, the novel. It's like a play, but it's impossible to produce. And we'll get to that. We'll get through it. It's a fun episode. The last 3 episodes are Eumaeus, Ithaca, and Penelope. Now, these all correspond with Homer's Odyssey, except for Wandering Rocks. I don't think there's a chapter titled that, but that's a Josian joke in here. So I think I'm going to leave you with that. It's already a bit too long, probably, but I'm excited to go through this again. I can't wait. I'm going to learn a lot. And Ulysses, you don't fear the Ulysses, believe me. So thank you for your time, your consideration. Hit me up on Voxer, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.